Black Female Project.
This is Leslie Stoval, your guest host for the Black Female Project podcast. Learn more about our work at www.blackfemaleproject.org. Hi there, this is Leslie Stoval from KCSM with another chapter, another edition of the Black Female Project. Our guest today, Belinda Bellinger, is jubilant about youth empowerment, education equity, grassroots community organizing, spoken word, performance theater, and transformational healing work. For more than 15 years, she has created instructional spaces where students and adults are seen, heard, and encouraged to be their authentic self and empowered to enact liberatory social change. She received her Bachelor's of Arts in Liberal Arts at Sarah Lawrence College and is currently the 7th grade history teacher at Summit, Tamalpais in Richmond, California. When she's not facilitating a classroom with her wit, she enjoys writing, creative nonfiction, cooking, and fellowship with chosen family. You can find Belinda on Instagram at alovesupreme420. You like John Coltrane?
Yes. St. John Coltrane.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So, did you grow up in Oakland?
No, I grew up in San Francisco, born and raised in Bayview, Hunters Point.
How did you get your passion for teaching? Were your parents educators?
My parents were not educators. My parents were actually union workers. Like my dad was a forklift driver for Candlestick Park, and my mom was a seamstress in the Macy's factory before it shut down.
Where was it?
It was right down the block from my grandparents' house, right on Paul in Exeter.
Oh, in the Bayview.
Yeah. So
nice as well in San Francisco.
Exactly.
It's so true.
It is.
So how did you get to becoming a teacher?
I became a classroom teacher through the work that I did doing youth organizing. When I was 15 years old, one of my best friends at the time said, "Oh, you're looking for a job? You need a job? Well, I got a great job for you. You get paid for being opinionated." He knew that I had a lot of opinions, so he thought it would be a great fit. It was a part of this organization called Youth Making a Change, which was the youth advocate, but now the youth organizing arm of Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth. They were based in the Mission, and now they're in the Excelsior District.
Okay.
And so I ended up learning how to become an advocate, also through the coalition work, learned how to become an organizer, and basically trying to create better opportunities for the young people in San Francisco, and specifically for working class youth of color.
So in helping them with getting more opportunities, you're teaching them how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So I was taught how to do it, and then I continued teaching young folks until I decided to leave, because I was like, oh, okay.
It's a natural progression.
Yeah, I believe that, true leadership is having the ability to develop folks to replace you, right? And not seeing yourself as like having like the Jesus, the Messiah complex, like, no one's going to be able to do anything if I'm not in this position of leadership. It's like, no, people should be able to be empowered to be able to do something, whether you're there or not. And so that was the case. I had multiple generations of young people who had came after me. And so I had one of my sisters tell me that it was time for me to go, because I had also been going to college, but I hadn't gotten my degree.
Sarah Lawrence, right?
No. I was at City College of San Francisco. So I was in community college for 6 years, going back and forth between doing youth organizing work and also going to school. And my experience in the public education system was not the best. And my motivation for becoming a teacher was I wanted to be the teacher that I didn't have.
What could you have done differently as a student to better your experience?
As a student?
Yeah.
I think the thing that I could have done differently is I could have spoke up even though I was afraid to. I grew up in a very abusive household where I wasn't able to speak or have feelings. And so I believe I went in the world kind of like not present and silent.
A little muted.
Yeah. And I feel like looking back at little Belinda, I could have had the courage to just speak out and tell somebody my story and tell somebody what was going on so that I could get the help that I needed.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like I had teachers who wanted to support me, saw my brilliance.
Saw your brilliance.
Yeah, saw my brilliance. But I think, yeah, being muted and having a wall up, like I didn't allow people in.
Those Patty LaBelle said, don't block the blessings.
Yeah, so I was blocking my blessings.
We all do at some point or another.
Right.
So how did you get to Sarah Lawrence?
So what I ended up doing is told my community, and with the help of my community, I ended up applying to different universities that took non-traditional students, non-traditionally aged students. Because I was a non-traditional student, I was going to do my undergrad at the age of 25, 26. Okay. And so a lot of the non-traditional age programs were on the East Coast at the Ivy League schools. Mm-hmm. And so I had applied to Mount Holyoke. I applied to Simmons. I applied to Sarah Lawrence. And I think there's like one more other school. Mount Holyoke and Mills, I didn't get accepted because they said I needed to have more like passing grades, like basically a B or higher on my transcript. Mm-hmm. But then Sarah Lawrence had accepted me. And it was interesting because I went on a trip during spring break with my best friend to go see the campus. And when I went to the department, the Center for Continuing Education department, and met the director, she said, we just put your acceptance letter in the mail. And I was like,
my timing's like, pretty good.
Right, exactly. So she was like, yeah, so I guess we can tell you now. And I was just like, okay, I'm moving to New York. So yeah.
Then you came back, you're teaching at Richmond. Mm-hmm. What are the challenges there?
In Richmond, the challenges.
Just a few.
Oh, Lord.
You got that?
Oh, my Lord. Okay, so Richmond, mm-hmm. So being from San Francisco, that it's now a place that's being, I feel like almost the entire 90% of the city is gentrified at this point because
San Francisco?
Yeah, because they moved into Baby Hunters Point, now, and they're developing all around it. And then having also lived in Oakland with my partner while still teaching in San Francisco, and then now being in Richmond, I feel like it reminds me of like old San Francisco when things weren't so developed or when things had shut down. So different businesses or mom and pop shops that had been there for years and then have been closed down. And where I lived, it's like near Point Richmond, but then also South Richmond and also the Civic Center. So it's like, it's not in the areas that are like being developed for people who want to retire on the outskirts of the city, mm-hmm. near the marina and the water. But I noticed it's like a large, like working class, working poor community. And I find it interesting that Richmond, it seems like it's been redlined, where you have the border of Richmond and then there's a street where eventually it becomes El Cerrito. And then on the other side, it's like Hilltop. So it seems like all the resources have been kept out of Richmond, but they're in the neighboring cities around. And so I see that impact in school. Like as a teacher, there's a mixture of students and their families who are working class and just working a lot of hours, and are unable to, come to the school and be at the school because they have to work in order to provide for their family. And then there's a mixture of students who are like lower middle class and their parents are able to provide kind of like the material things, And then I see another group of students and families who are poor and are struggling with those conditions while still trying to make sure that their child has a quality education. Because the school that I'm at is a charter school, but I've also taught in public school as well.
Tell me some specific challenges that you have inside the classroom.
So I first started teaching as a English language arts teacher. I've been teaching for 7 years. This is my 7th year. So I taught ELA for 6 years, and this is my first year teaching history, a non-quote-unquote tested subject. And so one of the things I noticed that's been consistent from when I was teaching in San Francisco all the way now to Richmond is that there's a population of students, our Black and brown students, come in at a grade level of either between third and fifth.
All the Black and brown students or some of them?
I would say majority. So the challenge is students coming into 7th grade with with there being gaps in their.
How are they promoted if they don't know the material?
Great question. So schools have a thing called social promotion. So in public schools, students are socially promoted, meaning like, oh, you're going to the next grade. So if you're in the 3rd grade and the next year you're supposed to go to the 4th grade, regardless of what your level of mastery is, you're sent to the 4th grade.
Why?
That's a good question. I don't actually know. In charter schools, they don't socially promote students.
Because I mean, I'm older than you, but like we went to school, and if you flunked, you stayed.
Yeah. Charter schools do that, but not public schools.
Wow. That's a disservice to the student. Very much so. So what successes have you had in the classroom?
Being able to create a safe space or a courageous space in my classroom where students feel like where they can fully express themselves and not have a wall up and show joy in learning. I think the trauma that students experience, especially Black and brown students experience being in the education system.
What kind of trauma?
So the trauma of being in a system that was not created for them and where they're tracked into becoming either a worker, a laborer, or a owner.
But everybody gets tracked in school by your scores.
Yeah, I think for young people though, who are not taught that there is this tracking system, but they're experiencing it, it causes trauma for them and them experiencing the racism or the oppression that comes up in being in a system that is tracking them based on their ability to perform without the schools having the necessary resources to be able to do that.
Okay.
So for example,
there's a gap.
Yeah. So if there's students who are coming into 7th grade, reading at a 3rd grade reading level, and the pressure is to one, as a classroom teacher, to support them in demonstrating mastery on the current 7th grade standards, while also seeing their gaps and trying to support them and do different interventions. But then doing this in a classroom where there's 24 or 27 or 30 or 32 or 36 students in the classroom with 4 different blocks, it's like a pressure cooker. It becomes challenging for the student who wants to do well, because all children want to do well. They love to learn. But then the frustration of not being able to either access the curriculum or to be able to engage in the curriculum in a way where they feel success. And then for the adults in their life, the classroom teacher, to feel the pressure to try to do whatever they need to have the student pass, but then have to manage like all the students with all these different needs. It's a challenge.
Yeah. It's like juggling almost.
Yes.
Different groups. Because the students who have mastered the curriculum, they resent the people holding them back and being slow, you know? Well, shouldn't they be in different classes?
I think
vice versa.
Right. I think that's a good point. And what I know in my experience is that the system pushes for us to have these inclusive classrooms where it's students at all levels. And what ends up happening for classroom teachers is we end up teaching to the middle. And so when the classroom is taught to the middle, then the outliers, the students who are either above grade level or below grade level, rarely get what they need.
Doesn't seem fair.
No, it's not fair for anybody. And it doesn't feel good for the students. It doesn't feel good for the classroom teachers. It doesn't feel good for the faculty, the staff at the school. It's not good for anyone.
But everybody says you got a rocking classroom. Yeah. I did a little research. You got a rocking classroom. Yeah.
I'm like, who said that?
No, because your passion and you advocate for the kids.
I do.
But not everybody does that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
No problem.
So listen, before I let you go, I got a question to ask you that we ask everybody. It's just impressionistic. Who would you put on your Black female Mount Rushmore?
I would put Fannie Lou Hamer. I would put Ida B. Wells. I would put Toni Morrison. And I would put, I don't know, it's a toss-up between Lauryn Hill or Missy Elliott.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little hip hop flavor. Very much. You know what? You know what I liked about Missy Elliott? She was a producer. She owned the means production. She had her own studio. I thought that was advanced. Well, Thank you so much for coming in, Belinda.
No problem.
And you educated me on some things because I just couldn't figure it out, grade levels and all this kind of thing, and why kids aren't doing well. But they'll all do well with having instruction and advocacy by someone like yourself.
Yes. Thank
all
you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Black Female Project.
Thank you for listening to the Black Female Project podcast. Black Female Project works to positively impact the wellness and professional experience of Black women. We celebrate women who thrive at work and share their stories with the girls coming behind us. Learn more at www.blackfemaleproject.org. Follow us on social media at Black Female Project. This is Leslie Stoval. Thanks for listening to the Black Female Project podcast.